The Department of Public Health and Human Services is pleased to bring you Aging Horizons. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, fraud, legal issues, veterans benefits, and caregiving. Aging Horizons is a program dedicated to inform and prepare Montanans on these timely issues, making a difference to you and your loved ones. Here now is today's program host.
Today on Aging Horizons, we'll be speaking with Susan Gobbs. She's a contract attorney with the Department of Public Health and Human Services, and we're going to be talking about capacity, what it is, how to determine if someone has it, and why it is incredibly important, and what you may be using it for. So make sure you stay tuned to Aging Horizons while we have this important discussion with Susan Gobbs.
Did you just text me?
I didn't want to disturb you if you were sleeping.
Sleeping? I'm sitting right next to you, silly.
There you are. Hey, I found a couple of Medicare helping programs online that I think we ought to look into.
It says if we qualify, we can get help paying for our prescription drugs. Oh, and there's a program that can help pay our Part B premium.
To learn more about extra help and Medicare savings programs, call your local SHIP counselor today.
Maybe I better text him.
I have so many questions about power of attorney.
Well, some powers of attorney are for finances and others are for healthcare decisions.
A power of attorney designates an agent who would make decisions on your behalf.
While making a power of attorney, you have the ability to control your agent's power.
You also have the ability to decide when that POA would take effect.
Wait, am I giving away all my rights?
Power of attorney isn't a license to make any decision for you, just those that you've specified.
Your agent should be somebody that's working in your best interest, but it should also be somebody that you would trust.
What if they try to abuse their power?
Protective measures like third-party accounting, secondary signatures, defined spending and gifting limits can help protect against financial exploitation. An agent's powers can always be limited by a customized power of attorney, and they can be revoked by you or the court if the power of attorney is abused.
So carefully drafted estate planning documents can help ensure that your finances are monitored, but not abused.
If you or someone you know is being exploited, please report to Aging Services Bureau at 844-277-9300 or the Legal Service Developer at 1-800-332-2272. This message sponsored by the DPHHS Aging Service Bureau.
Respite care is amazing. If you are capable of doing it, the rewards are beyond measure.
Stephanie Young, respite care provider, on the unexpected benefits of helping people in need.
Being a respite care provider is an amazing experience. It's something that what you give, you get back 100-fold. You receive so much more than you could ever imagine.
To find out how to change lives, including your own, go to respite.mt.gov.
Welcome to Aging Horizons, brought to you by the Department of Public Health and Human Services. I'm your host, Katie Lovell, and today we're going to be speaking with Susan Gobbs. She's a contracted attorney with the Department of Public Health and Human Services. Susan, thank you for being with us today.
Always a pleasure.
So, Susan, I think one of the questions that we get a lot in our program is whether or not someone has the capacity to take a certain action. And I think sometimes even using that word can be really confusing for folks. So let's talk all about capacity.
Okay.
What is it?
Okay. Capacity is a general term about whether or not somebody understands what their actions may involve. And capacity came actually out of criminal law, kind of what we thought about with the insanity defense. In estate planning, which is what our program does, it's very important that the individuals who come to us for their estate planning needs have the capacity to understand the documents that they're executing.
And is capacity a one-size-fits-all thing? Everyone has the same level of capacity?
It is not, and in fact it ebbs and flows. And you have different levels of capacity necessary for different decisions and different legal documents. So it's very important. It's not uncommon for someone to call our office and say, I need to have some powers of attorneys documents created for my mom. Well, you're not the person we need to talk to.
Sure.
It's your mom we need to talk to, because we need to ascertain if she knows what those documents are and the consequences of executing them.
And what about like an on-off switch? Is a capacity a thing that you have until you don't and then you never have it again?
No, it ebbs and flows. Again, somebody can be very with it on Tuesday morning. not with it on Wednesday afternoon. And the other thing I think it's important for people to know is just because you have a diagnosis of Alzheimer's or another kind of dementia, that doesn't mean you've totally lost your capacity. There may be times where you're not able to understand as well as other times, but certainly just because you have the diagnosis doesn't mean we get to talk about you like you're a piece of furniture in the room.
Sure. And we've mentioned Alzheimer's and dementia, but what are some other things that can affect whether or not a person has capacity?
Well, there's a lot of things that will appear to be capacity issues that are not.
Sure.
Far more people in the senior population have hearing loss than have dementia. So it may appear that somebody has lost their capacity to understand, but they're not hearing you. They're not hearing what's happening. The factors that affect capacity are like with any of us. If you're too hot, if you're too cold, if you're hungry or hangry, if you're thirsty, if you're tired, if you've stressed out. One thing that really affects people's capacity is if they've recently lost their spouse,
Sure.
or even more poignantly, if they've lost an adult child.
Sure.
There are a lot of different things that affect capacity. It doesn't mean you've lost it forever. It means that in the moment, you don't have the capacity that you normally would have to understand things. And I like to think about capacity as rungs on a ladder.
Sure.
So the lower the decision making necessary, the lower it is on the rungs of the ladder, and we work our way up. And a lot of times people say, oh, you have to have so much capacity when you do a will. Not really. Wills are pretty simple documents. Most people don't have a lot that ends up being put into a will. I mean, there's exceptions. Obviously, we have people in Montana who are quite wealthy and have very complicated estate planning, but a lot of people don't. And the things that are more complicated are things like nursing home contracts, assisted living contracts, financial powers of attorney, because there's a lot buried in those documents, and you really need to understand not only the document itself, but the consequences of the power that you may be giving someone else to handle your finances or to deal with a facility.
Sure. So just because someone has lost the capacity to complete some of those higher rung actions doesn't mean that they lose the capacity to do some of those lower rung things.
Exactly, and it's I think it's an ebb and flow kind of thing.
Sure.
One day you may have somebody come in and it's quite clear that that's not a good day for them and they do not understand. If you come back 2 weeks later, they may be sharp as a tack and be just right there with you. And it's not necessarily an age-related thing. Seniors as a whole usually have a mild cognitive decline.
Sure.
That's very different than having Alzheimer's or another dementia. And the older you get, the more apt you are to develop dementia and lose your capacity. So it's just really important not to pull the trigger and decide someone has capacity when they don't, because we will see this where family members will come in and we'll say, well, will mom understand the documents? And they'll go, well, she'll know how to sign them, but she won't understand them.
Sure.
Well, we're not going to do documents that someone doesn't understand.
Right, absolutely. When you're thinking about whether or not, someone has capacity, who's an expert? Who do you talk to?
Well, normally we look to their primary care provider. A lot of times they're reluctant to make a formal diagnosis. About 50% of the people with dementia in Montana never get a formal diagnosis. If you really want to go to the true experts, you're talking a neuropsychologist, a neurologist, a gerontologist. Those aren't always available for most people in Montana, so we do look to the primary care provider to give us some guidance. There are certain tests that I will do with individuals that I'm working with to try and ascertain whether or not they understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. One thing we do is we don't let the family members be in the room when we're talking to this individual.
Sure.
We want to make sure that this individual is there of their own free will and that they understand why they're there and they're comfortable in executing those documents.
Wonderful. When we get back, we're going to do a little bit more discussion about how to work with folks with limited capacity, so stay tuned.
Elder abuse is a growing problem, and it's happening right here in our Montana communities. At least 1 in 10 older adults are victims of physical or emotional abuse, financial exploitation, or neglect. To get help or report elder abuse, call your local area agency on aging or Adult Protective Services at 1-844-277-9300.
Every 65 seconds, someone is affected with Alzheimer's or other dementias. Many become isolated at a time when help is most needed. If you or someone you love is affected, help is available, both for people with memory loss and their caregivers. Memory loss can feel frightening, but you are not alone. Call the free 24/7 Alzheimer's Association helpline, 800-272-3900, for guidance and support.
You mean I can get help paying my prescription drug premiums?
Let me get this straight. I could be eligible for help with my family's prescription premiums even though I own my own home?
And our assets won't be counted.
If you're a Montana resident enrolled in the Medicare prescription drug program, you could be eligible for help paying your premiums. Call or visit the Big Sky RX website today to find out, even if you think you're over income.
What do you know about that? I'm eligible.
When I found out it was diabetes, my first thought was, Barb, you need help. You have to take control of this. There is help. My doctor gave me a phone number. I called and signed up with a diabetes educator. There is help. I have to put blinders on when I walk past the bakery counter. I can feel my blood sugar go up. You succeed a little at a time. If you have diabetes, help is available. You do not have to do it alone.
Ask your doctor about diabetes education or visit montana211.org.
Welcome back to Aging Horizons. We're talking with Susan Gobbs today. And Susan, let's talk about a little bit about what are some tips and tricks when working with folks that may have some capacity issues?
Well, first thing you want to do is you want to ascertain what they understand and what they don't understand. Sometimes it's necessary to meet with people several times so that you can ascertain where they are on their journey. Because again, with capacity, what you want is somebody who understands the documents before they sign them, and before they're drafted, can read those documents or have them read to them and understand what those documents say, ask appropriate questions, be able to sign those documents, and then know that those documents have been signed and what those documents were about. Doesn't mean they have to be able to keep that information for 6 months.
Sure.
Doesn't even mean they need to keep it for 3 months, but they need to keep it long enough that everybody is comfortable that this person understands. Because capacity is rarely something that we deal with in the legal world until someone's dead.
Sure.
Usually it's not a problem until we're reading the will. And then there's questions about did they know what they were doing when they left all the money to Sister Susie instead of Brother John? We ask questions about if they're going to disinherit a child. And I've been really surprised in this population, a lot of people are disinheriting one or more of their children.
Sure.
So we ask them, why is that the case, and how did you come to this conclusion? And most times people will say things like, I haven't heard from her in 20 years. Last account I had, he was a drug addict on the streets of San Francisco. That will tell you that that's a rational, reasoned decision versus I left Sister Susie out because she was supposed to bring me to the legal document clinic today and she didn't, and Brother Johnny had to do it, so therefore I'm cutting her out.
Sure.
So you just really want to talk to people about why they're making the decisions they're making.
Sure. And are there things that you can do to help prepare folks for best case scenario? So they're going to an important meeting where they're going to need to be able to focus and concentrate. Are there things that we can do to help prepare our parents, our friends, our relatives?
First off, I think you make sure that they're not hangry.
Sure.
You feed people, you hydrate people, you make sure the room is not too cold or not too hot. You can do some preparation about, in the days leading up to the appointment. Remember, we're going to go see the lawyer about, such and such, or do you know why we're going to go see the lawyer? And try to make it as comfortable a situation for them It sounds funny, but if you promise them ice cream after the appointment or lunch, something that they find enjoyable, they will react to it better. The other thing is, don't anticipate that somebody's going to be able to concentrate for 4 or 5 hours at a time.
Sure.
Breaks are really necessary. Multiple appointments may be necessary. So be considerate of this individual who is making some very important choices about their future and their future care and what happens when they're no longer with us. And realize this is very important to them, and don't rush. Please don't rush people. It just makes it that much worse if you rush people. Just let them process as they can process.
And when we're looking at our friends, our family, our spouse, what are some things that should be sending up red flags for us that maybe capacity is starting to wane, that maybe is a good time to start thinking about these documents?
Seniors, and I am one, will frequently misplace things, go into a room, can't remember why they're in the room. It's one thing to misplace your keys. Most people can create their steps. They can go back and figure out where they left the keys.
Sure.
For example, I left my phone at home today. I know exactly where it is, but I left it at home. If the keys are in the freezer, if the keys are in the safe, if they can't give you any idea of what a key is,
Sure.
that's an issue. People will, have difficulties maybe with driving. Not the actual act of driving, but their reaction time is slow. People will start getting a little paranoid. They misinterpret what you may be saying to them. And those are sort of the red flags where you're like, this person may start to be really having some issues. Maybe they were really verbal, now they're not very verbal. Personality changes, all of those things are related to cognitive difficulties which relate to capacity.
Sure. So once a person has a diagnosis of either dementia or Alzheimer's or something else that may be affecting their cognition, they no longer have capacity, right? We can't help them at all.
No, that is in fact not true. Again, it ebbs and it flows, and a formal diagnosis is not the be-all and end-all. And I think it's very important, particularly with people with Alzheimer's or another dementia, for them to be participatory in any future planning for them. And so we have to acknowledge that, yes, they may have some issues, but it's their body. They are still there. They may not be reacting the same way they would have 5 years ago. But we don't just say, that's it, it's over, it's done. Actual incapacity is decided by a court.
Sure.
And that would be in the context of a guardianship action.
Susan, when we get back, I'd like to talk a little bit about what we do to prepare for incapacity, what kind of documents we need, and why maybe some of these documents are more important than others. Okay. So make sure you stay tuned, because we're really going to cover your estate planning. What does that look like? Why do you need to think about certain documents, and what types of documents maybe you should prioritize if it's getting to the end of your ability to do so. So make sure you stay tuned to Aging Horizons.
I think the most pleasant surprise when we turned 65 and signed up for Medicare Part B was finding out about our Welcome to Medicare preventive visit.
It was free, and it gave us the opportunity to visit with our doctors and establish a plan for our health going forward.
They reviewed our medical history, measured our height, weight, blood pressure, and counseled us on other risk factors.
To learn more about Medicare's free or low-cost preventive and wellness benefits, call your local SHIP counselor at 800-551-3191. I mentioned it's free, right?
Twice.
I've been shooting since I was young. It's something I've always enjoyed. I wasn't feeling like myself, but my friend noticed. He asked if he could hold onto my guns temporarily. At first, I was a little shocked, but then I agreed. I think he saved my life that day.
This is Bill. He just received his new Medicare card and is following some simple rules to protect himself from fraud. He knows to never give out his Medicare, Social Security, or bank number over the phone. And this is Nancy. She knows that to detect any problems, she always reads her Medicare summary notice or Medicare Advantage EOB to make sure the billing is correct. Both Bill and Nancy know that anything suspicious can be reported to Montana SMP at 1-800-551-3191.
Summer in Montana is a great time to visit your local farmer's market. Enjoy the social atmosphere while shopping for a wide variety of fresh, locally grown produce. Together with both WIC and Senior Farmers Market nutrition programs, you help feed your family 5 or more daily servings of fruits and vegetables for better health. You also help local ag producers and enhance the state's economy. So, for summer fun that's nutritious and helps Montana's economy, shop at your local farmers market.
Welcome back to Aging Horizons. Today we're speaking with Susan Gobbs, and she's discussing with us capacity. What is it, how to make sure you have it, and what documents should we prioritize once we're noticing that it's waning in our friends and family. So Susan, now we've noticed, we've seen the red flags, we know that our spouse, our partner, our family member is failing. What do we do right away? It's now an urgent situation.
Obviously, you can call our program and we can talk about helping your family. If someone has an issue with capacity, we only deal with those people in person. We don't do it over the phone, we don't do it over Zoom. It's very important and generally we have 2 sets of eyes. They're there watching, asking appropriate questions so we can ascertain whether somebody has capacity. In my mind, the most important documents that we do are the durable powers of attorney. And the reason for that is as you lose your ability to make decisions, you need someone who can step in and make those decisions on your behalf. We do 2 separate kinds of documents. We do a financial power of attorney, we do a healthcare power of attorney. Those can go into effect immediately upon execution, or they can have springing language. Springing language means it doesn't go into effect until a certain action takes place. My doctor decides I'm incapacitated. We've previously talked about how that can be difficult to have that diagnosis.
Sure.
But if you have an agent, and the agent should be somebody you trust with your car, with your checkbook, with your dog, anything that's very valuable to you, this is the person. Particularly in the healthcare power of attorney, it's also important to have somebody who will honor your wishes. A lot of times when somebody is failing physically, particularly if it's a last illness, a fatal illness, it's really difficult on the family members to let that person go.
Sure.
And so you want somebody who's going to know what it is you want to have done. Do you want to be resuscitated? Do you want to go through your 4th bout of chemotherapy? Do you want to stay on the dialysis? And only in those cases you want somebody who will say, well, Mom has said she doesn't want XYZ to happen.
Sure.
And most seniors we deal with are very clear that they don't want to be kept alive by heroic measures. They don't want feeding tubes. They just want to go out in comfort. And there's also living wills. We can do those as well. Some people choose to do both, a living will and a durable power of attorney for healthcare. Others choose just to do the durable power of attorney for healthcare. Same thing with the financial. You want somebody you can trust with your money. I so often see families that appoint the eldest son, and we have discussions about, well, why are you appointing Timmy? Well, he's our oldest kid. Is he good with money? Oh, heck no. His sister, Susie, is an accountant. Then why are you appointing Timmy? And so it's real interesting to discuss with the family why they've chosen somebody, and sometimes when it's given to them in that situation, they go, oh, well, maybe that's not the best person to be appointed. The other thing I find really heartbreaking is when you have somebody who has dementia and we're doing documents for them and their spouse will say, well, I want him to be my power of attorney, and you have to say, but he can't be.
Right.
And these are families that have depended couples who've depended on each other for a half a century.
Sure, absolutely. So in that situation, it isn't just important just for the person who's starting to have a decline, but also for their family to get their documents in order.
Exactly, because again, we know that there are a fair amount of caregivers who will pass away before the person with the dementia. And I know we're spending a lot of time on dementia, but that's really the major issue when we're talking about capacity, is that's the major disease that we're working with that affects somebody's capacity. So it's very important that everybody, that spouses both get their documents done, because something may happen to the caregiver.
Sure.
And the caregiver, even if something doesn't happen to them, they have to realize that their partner for these many years is no longer able to step up to the plate and act in the same way they have acted throughout their marriage.
Do folks need to wait till they start to notice this decline to do these documents?
Definitely not. I would prefer, quite frankly, that people not wait until there's a decline. What we see is a lot of people come to us and everybody's quick, they're on the mark, we don't have any capacity issues. The hardest part of my job, I think, is when I have to look at someone and say, your spouse can no longer execute these documents. You've just waited a little too long.
Sure.
Because, again, people try to cover it up. We have a stigma around Alzheimer's and dementia, just like we do around mental illness, and people don't want to admit that their spouse is having this issue.
And if folks have concern about, capacity, somebody's waning, where do they go for resources in their community?
They can certainly reach out, like I said, to their medical providers. The Alzheimer's Association is a really good resource to talk about Alzheimer's and other dementias. A lot of good training on how to work with people who have that diagnosis or who you think are suffering from that.
Sure.
And your area agencies on aging, they have a lot of information that they can bring to the table, including the fact that they know about the Legal Services Developer Program and they know what we do and how we do it.
Absolutely. And then an attorney if they have one.
I'm certainly not going to cut private attorneys out of this. They do the vast majority of this work. And yes, I'd actually prefer, if you've had a family lawyer for 20, 30, 40 years, they're in a better position to judge capacity than I am.
Absolutely.
So you want somebody that has had a relationship and knows that this person's not acting like themselves.
So the key is really plan and plan early.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, because again, if you don't plan and you don't get those documents executed, your spouse or your children may have to go to court, they may have to get a guardianship, you then lose a lot of your rights as an adult citizen. And it's a very sad situation, and you can avoid it by careful pre-planning.
All right. Thank you so much, Susan, and thank you for staying tuned with us to Aging Horizons.
Special thanks to the Department of Public Health and Human Services for their continued support. Hosts on Aging Horizons are program specialists at the Montana Office on Aging. Production facilities provided by Video Express Productions. For more information about Aging Horizons, call the Department of Public Health and Human Services toll-free at 800-332-2272.